This episode of Shadiversity is brought to you by my stupendous, awesome, legendary supporters on Patreon. If you'd like to support Shadiversity on Patreon, visit patreon.com/Shadiversity.
Thus is Sparta! Whoa, that was a bit more destructive than Sparta!
Shadiversity.
Greetings, I'm Shad, and the new Assassin's Creed game, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, has a new move that you can do in it called the Spartan Kick, which is of course taken as inspiration from the movie 300. And in the game, this kick is shown to be exceptionally powerful and very effective in combat. Well, what I want to do is analyze this move and see how effective it would really be in real life. Now, I was a very active practitioner of one-arm martial arts when I was a teenager, and currently I'm a passionate student of historical combat, specifically medieval weapons and armour. And so I want to apply my understanding that I've gained over the years of historical combat and such to this manoeuvre. So of course I was taught this kick when I learnt martial arts back in the day, but I don't think I can remember myself using it even once in sparring and stuff like that, because I never found it to be really effective. I practiced it, but not very effective. Now I'm sure there are other martial artists out there who are much more talented than me and of course are more actively training than I currently am and can execute this kick far better than I could, but for me, never really found it useful. And there was a couple of problems and issues that I found with it that caused it to be not very effective. One, I never really was able to kick someone off their balance to the point that they fell over, or to give me such an advantage that I was able to get the upper hand and win the bout. The next thing is, there's just equal a higher chance that you could knock yourself and push yourself back, because if the opponent is anchored securely in place and are able to push against your kick, well, they can turn that kick against you in a very big way. Now the other thing is, if you are off when you execute this kick, you can actually miss, the mark and hit with your toes and potentially break some of your toes. Now, if you know how to do it, you can avoid it, but if the opponent can see it coming in and can angle maybe their knee up above the kick and they end up hitting high, there are ways in which you could injure yourself. It's not common, but it does depend on how you're doing it, because there's the way in which you extend the knee and then extend the foot to do the kick, but then my goodness, those birds. So that's kind of the snap kick version, and there's not a lot of power in it. It'll do nothing. If you really want to do power, you need to set yourself up, just do a good boot. Yet still, if the opponent was ready for that, even if you, pace yourself and just get ready for a big high kick, they could easily grab it, raise a guard, push you off balance, and you're screwed. These stupid birds! There are birds everywhere tweeting their butts off. We're just going to try and ignore it, hopefully.
And in actual fact, now that I remember, someone has actually tried this kick against me. I was in high school, I've always been a big nerd, getting bullied, and so I picked a fight with a bully to get it to stop, and he was a practitioner of karate. We got in a fight, and through the exchanges, he landed a solid kick right into my gut. And you know what I did? I took it, pushed forward, and just launched him back, which knocked him completely off his feet onto his butt. And he was so demoralized by just getting fully knocked off his feet, everyone around laughing their heads off because of how funny and silly he looked just getting trounced, that he backed off from the fight and it ended right then and there. You see, I was an odd kid growing up, all into the nerdy things that before they became back into the mainstream of coolness like superheroes and stuff. And because I'm actually a very non-confrontational person, I was seen as an easy target by the bullies because they believed I would never fight back. But in actual reality, it just took more for me to reach that point. But when I did, alright, I was more than capable of standing up for myself. Because in my own personal experience, the only way that I was ever to get the bullies off my back was to stand up for yourself and beat them up. Which I've actually done several times in my life. I can actually think of 4 separate occasions just off the top of my head. But in any regards, I do have first-hand experience of this kick in a real fight, and it did not work out at all for the person who tried to use it. Very easy to counter in my experience.
So look, I fully admit there are probably many martial artists who can employ this kick far better than I ever could, because at the same time, I mean, I learnt, the classic spinning back kick in Taekwondo. I never used it in combat either because I found it to be too high risk for the reward, and there are other far safer types of maneuvers that you can do in combat that gave me just as high a chance of winning. So the kicks that I like to use when I was doing martial arts were ones in which if I hit a solid target, I could recover quickly and get my guard back up. So, ones that came in on the side, hitting the thighs, hitting the knees, and potentially the head if they were open. So shin hits, and also maybe something a little higher when the time called for it. The other thing about what we will call the Spartan Kick in this video is the fact that even if you can do it effectively, you always need to gauge it against the type of opponent you're fighting, because if your opponent has a far more weight, lower center of gravity, more balance and more mass than you do, even if you can do that kick effectively, it's probably never going to work against them, okay? If you do not have enough force behind it, instead of pushing them back, you're going to push yourself back as a result. So you can run up, do this big kick, and as a result, you'll just kick yourself back and potentially even knock yourself off your feet. So very dangerous. The other thing about this kick is power generation. Now, I understand that this is a game that we're looking at, and so they've just added the kick in because it can look really cool, but they have ramped the power up so much that it's like they have a cannon attached to their foot, that whenever they land this kick, it just explodes and someone just gets launched for a mile. Just a minute. I didn't know firearms were in this game, but now they are. So yes, I get it, it is cool, but seeing someone of a certain weight class do this massive kick which just explodes another person, kind of immersion breaking, isn't it? Especially if you apply basic physics like stationary inertia, friction from your foot keeping you anchored in place, and also what level of momentum you have. So that was just my thoughts in regards to this style of kick in unarmed martial arts. But when we change things up and add weapons into the mix, this type of kick becomes very detrimental, very risky, and I would say never use it except in really exceptional circumstances. It's not a perfect maneuver to use against any type of opponent in any type of combat situation. No, this can be very, very dangerous. There are a lot of weapons you can use in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, but the weapon set we would hope to see more often than not, based on the time period, is what the classic hoplite uses, which would be spear and shield. And their type of shield is not this type of shield, let me just say. They use one similar in size, but the hand grip is actually strapped to your arm about right there, and this part extends further on that side, and it is called the hoplon or aspis. So I'll try and analyze the usefulness of the Spartan Kick with shield and weapon combo and just weapon and weapon dual wielding, okay? So the issue is about using this weapon combo when using a spear is that the kick is not going to have nearly as much range as your spear does, okay? So your spear can get really, really in there, and the kick, do you see a difference there? The other issue with doing such a kick like this is that it extends one of your limbs quite far in front of your main protective implement, I mean your shield. Now this thing here is meant to protect you, but to perform the kick you have to move it aside at least a little bit, and oftentimes I reckon they'll just swing it wide open, which is an invitation from your opponent to just kill you, because if they're using a spear, which according to the period they really should be, right? If someone tries to do a Spartan kick against you, you can outreach them from the range of their kick. Even if they get close enough to do it, you have a shield to protect yourself. And so they're just going to knock you back a little bit or knock them further back, and then you can just do a big stab in reprisal and they're dead. And so if you're going to try and use that against an opponent, that's probably what they're going to do, and you'll be dead. In actual fact, this analysis isn't too complicated, because even with other weapon combinations, and I'll show you. Okay, so I got a real sword here, but I don't have a half spearhead, so I might have to just use something to improvise. My old wooden short sword, this will do. So like I said, with other weapon combinations, the only time in which you would really want to use a kick like that is if you know your opponent's weapons are previously engaged with something else. Now, this could happen if your opponent, if you do it a strike or something like that. So dual wielding, offhand weapon is usually a defensive weapon, and this is your main attacking one, and so you would do it a strike, something or whatever, and if you get in the bind with someone, their weapon is engaged with your weapon, and so you could do a kick underneath their guard, preferably in the balls. Honestly, that's the other thing. If you're going to do a Spartan kick in the chest, if you're fighting a guy, a far more effective move is just kick him right in the gonads. That is far more crippling than just getting shoved back a bit by this potential kick, because remember, we don't have a cannon attached to our foot in real life. So really, I think this is the only situation where kicking could be useful when you're actually using weapons, because this is the thing. Your weapons are far more lethal and effective than kicking, okay? You can kill someone with a strike landing from this thing with even less force than you ever could with a kick like, you know, the Spartan Kick. And so if you're using two weapons and your main one is engaged in the bind, generally you never hold a strike in the bind. You would move it around to do something right in reprisal, because when you... By the way, if you don't know what is in the bind is, it's when two weapons cross, they are now bound together in the bind. That's the terminology. So whenever you get in the bind, it's actually a big opportunity because you can feel what the opponent is doing based on the pressure they're pushing against it. And you have the opportunity to manipulate, push things on the side, get it around, and move their weapon out of the way for a follow-up strike. And if you're dual wielding, if you get in the bind and you have pushed their weapons in a position in which you have them kind of locked away, instead of kicking, you have another weapon to stab with, all right? So why would you kick? The other thing, I mean, you can use this kick against any opponent, no matter their size, weight, or whatever. And so you see the character using this kick against people holding shields. Going up trying to kick someone with a big, massive shield is useless and so dangerous because, like I said with the spear and, you know, with the shield, when you extend your foot ready for the kick, you're extending it ready for the opponent just to attack you. It's like an invitation saying, here's a limb, chop it off. Because even if your opponent isn't using a shield, they still have other weapons like a sword. And so, oh, there's a foot coming to, even if the kick lands, there's a leg right there with no protection. Oh, I got kicked, slash, foot chopped off. But what if they are wearing armor because they have a greave, you know, on the shin? Okay, level of protection, still not good, because what if they slash upwards or something like that? This isn't an effective combat maneuver, especially when weapons are being used. Weapons enhance a warrior's lethal potential, and so choosing to go unarmed is a very odd choice when you have an opportunity to just use your weapon and kill them instead. There are certain circumstances in which both weapons are engaged and you can do a kick, but the Spartan Kick in particular, not that great a move. Go for the balls, all right? Kick him in the balls, something like that, or trip him up, okay? Especially when the weapons get locked away, trip him up, and then they are wide open to dispatch them right away. And that's something I have done when training with swords. Weapons get locked away, trip up, bang, take him out. There you go. These are my thoughts on the Spartan Kick as we see featured in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Thank you for watching. I hope you have enjoyed. And if you're interested in my other kind of reviews and analysis of either movies, video games, or pop culture, well, there's plenty of that on my channel. So remember to subscribe to check out those and so you don't miss a future video. Thank you for watching. I hope you have enjoyed. And of course, I hope to see you again. So until that time, farewell.